Hello everyone, this is 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗵 from 𝗕𝗲𝗀 Corporation. First, let me take the honor to thank you all for joining us today. Let's go over a few housekeeping items before we start. I would request you all to please mute your phones during the presentation. For all attendees with questions, request you to key in your questions on the WebEx chat and we will respond to those questions at the end of the presentation. Your questions will be answered sequentially. If you are unable to get to any of your questions due to time constraints, we will respond to them separately over an email. Just to let you know that we will be recording this session and we will be sharing it with all the attendees. For today's session, we have David Griswold from Deloitte. David is a specialist leader in Deloitte's finance and enterprise performance market offering. With close to about 20 years of finance operations excellence, both in industry and consulting, David is recognized as a thought leader in Deloitte's finance operations excellence offering and is focused on helping his clients achieve transformation through digital enablers. David's experience includes leading process optimization and service delivery transformation programs globally. Primarily, David has been focusing on life sciences, consumer products, and retail sectors. We also have with us Phyllis Saavedra. Phyllis is the Director for Order-to-Cash Solutions at 𝗕𝗲𝗀 Corporation. She has been working in the field of finance, specifically in order-to-cash for more than 20 years in both functional as well as consultative roles. Over the years, she has held several senior management positions in companies such as ScanDisk, Novellus, and Saba Software. Additionally, she has extensive experience as a consultant and implementer of software in all areas of order-to-cash life cycles. Without taking much of your time anymore, let me welcome Phyllis to start the presentation. Over to Phyllis. Thank you.
Thank you, 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗵. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I have to say it's a very exciting time to be in finance. We're seeing so many transformative technologies that are changing the workplace and how we do our jobs. Before I get started today, I wanted to take a moment to introduce our company, 𝗕𝗲𝗀, just in case you're not familiar with us. 𝗕𝗲𝗀 is a cloud-based software solution that combines the power of data management, advanced analytics, and smart automation to make more efficient and effective the order-to-cash operations of the business. It is powered by the Solix Big Data platform. 𝗕𝗲𝗀 is located in Northern California. We're in the Silicon Valley in the United States. And as you can see from the far right side of the screen, we have a wide variety of diverse customers spread out across the globe. So let's get started. History has shown us that while technology does in fact eliminate jobs, it does also create new jobs and even better ones to replace them. We believe that within the next 5 years, you are going to see major disruptions in how finance teams, including order-to-cash organizations, do their jobs. Keeping with this premise, Deloitte Consulting has come up with 5 predictions about the future of finance. In today's webinar, David is going to provide us with insights into their approach to the Finance 2025 report and how Deloitte is predicting the work and the workplace are going to be changing. With all this in mind, I am going to be discussing about these predictions, how they are evolving within the order-to-cash departments, the technologies that they are adopting, and how the companies need to change in order to become integrators of information, global process owners, and maintainers of third-party relationships. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David to get started.
So thanks, Phyllis. So before we dig in, I wanted to just take a few minutes and reiterate some of the things that you were talking about today in terms of digital. So as you can see on the slide, the good news is pilots are happening really across all of the digital tools, so robotics, natural language, predictive analytics, even blockchain. So the technologies and the tools that you mentioned around reimagining finance, they're here and they are being used. The challenge is they continue to evolve and innovation happens relatively quickly, meaning that we need to keep our eyes thinking forward and looking ahead. So if you flip to the next slide, with an eye on that future, we came up with these predictions. And so this is what we feel our job is to anticipate how organizations need to progress, what they need to evolve into, and how and when that evolution will happen, particularly for the CFO. So in thinking about the future, we focused on three primary questions, as you can see on the slide here. So the first, the possibilities of the future of finance with combined digital technologies. So we look at these technologies independently when we do some pilots, but really the thought process needs to be, how do they combine together for more effective and integrated solutions? And then second is how finance work would get done and by whom. And really that talks to the talent, the types of skills and capabilities that will need to be developed as this digital evolution continues. And then thirdly, how finance contributes to overall company success. So what the digital enablement and kind of the evolution of finance is enabling is for finance practitioners to be involved, not just within their own lane, but across business function. So cross collaboration and knowledge sharing about the business is a critical factor. So with this, we've come up with 8 predictions, and we'll talk about those across the balance of the hour here. And we'll spend a little time discussing each of these, as Phyllis mentioned. So why don't we go ahead and flip to the next page, and we'll go into the first one. So this is the finance factory. So in the coming years, cloud-based ERP automation, cognitive innovation, it all will continue to evolve and expand, and at a relatively rapid pace. This continues to create opportunities to simplify processes, and most importantly, free up people. So as we mentioned, we look at, Phyllis mentioned the work and the workforce and the workplace. These are 3 themes we'll talk about across the balance of the day when we look at these predictions. And so when we think about Finance Factory and the work, what we're seeing really in finance is they will excel, our practitioners in our discipline. We excel in translating the business processes and governance models for automation. We're already seeing this with the advent of RPA within a lot of the back office space. The real-time metrics, they'll continue to expand and become table stakes in most organizations. And then in the workforce, there'll be a premium on talent. And we'll talk about talent throughout the balance of the hour as well. People who understand these technologies as well as the business, this combination of capabilities, it will continue to shift towards a hybrid type workforce where processes are continually being augmented by robotics and cognitive tools and need human interaction to help interpret results. And then in the workplace, the finance reach into the business, it will continue to expand, primarily due to the availability of data and the speed of the processes. So leading organizations, they're developing more command type centers of finance groups, smaller groups of professionals that monitor a broader array of processes using dashboards, chatbots, voice integration, and the like. But overall, what we're seeing is a broader sort of impact and influence from our finance colleagues. So finance, yes, it'll be leaner in the operational space, so transactional accounting will get automated. However, expectations from business finance areas like planning and forecasting, the business partnering and decision support that you perform, reporting, plus specialized finance areas like tax and treasury, those will all continue to expand and demand more from our finance practitioners. So I'll turn it over to Phyllis to talk a little bit more about the O2C space.
So thank you, David. As you can see, the way we're kind of laying out today is David is talking in general about the 8 predictions in finance, and I'm going to talk very specifically to those predictions and how they work for order to cash and how they're playing out today. As you can imagine, David spoke a lot about automation. That is really the 𝗔𝗍𝗄 sweet spot. So, historically, order to cash departments have been highly transactional, manual operations. They use things like snail mail to send invoices and statements, manually post cash receipts that come in from the bank, approve credit applications by hand, and they do a lot of slow and time-consuming processes. Today, with the use of software solutions, order-to-cash operations have the ability to automate and digitalize anywhere from about 80 to 100% of their business. In today's world, we have the ability to bring our customers on board. Digital credit applications with digital signatures. Everything is online and paper-free, and the approval process makes it a very rapid process of bringing a new customer into the fold. Sending invoices to customers. People aren't sticking invoices in envelopes anymore. These are all going out digitally. Processing payments. Payments come in through the bank every day into these order-to-cash departments, and no longer does somebody have to sit at a desk and post those payments to those receipts or to those open invoices. Everything is being done in an automated fashion. One of the biggest areas of automation is in collection strategy. Collectors, the people that collect the money in the accounts receivable department, now are doing strategic collections. They're not spending their time on the customers that pay without contact. They're spending their time on those high-risk, high-touch customers that need a little extra work and in the areas that are really specifically driven by the business. Another area is managing disputes and deductions. Those short pays that come in from customers are really, those are being handled in a workflow fashion so that we can very quickly and easily see why our customers aren't paying and use this data to drive business, changes in the business operations. And then finally, we're seeing a lot of self-service tools out there in the marketplace. Tools that are allowing customers to come in, not have to have human intervention, and being able to automate the entire process of gaining access into the customer environment. With all of these integrated automation, we're seeing organizational silos disappear, and we're now better able to present a single face to the customer. What we at 𝗲𝗄 are calling the trifecta of automation, analytics, and artificial intelligence is giving us the ability to do all of this. We are seeing that this desire is being driven by really 5 different things. Here we call those 5 things the 5 C's. Cost controls or cost management, including planning and budgeting. Internal controls for assuring effectiveness and efficiency and reliable reporting. Audit and regulatory compliance. Consistent and predictable cash flow, and specifically a customer-centric organization. This new digital order-to-cash factory applies the 80-20 rule. At least 80% of all operations in the future will become digital and automated through technology, and the new and changing workforce will continue to manage the remaining 20% of the business that still requires human intervention. Humans are never going to go away, but their role is going to transform. And we're going to see a little bit more of that throughout the presentation today.
Yeah, thanks, Phyllis. I think you did a great job there, teeing up a lot of the themes that we'll discuss over the balance of our time as we get into some of the other predictions. Looking specifically here at the role of finance, kind of more broadly, we expect finance organizations to evolve into full-fledged business centers. Finance, they will continue to service the business, but the ability to control those resources now will be something dependent upon how much value the finance practitioners can continue to be able to add. So there'll be a premium on knowledge sharing as business partnering and some of that analytic work continues to shift upstream, and finance becomes and continues to become more part of that type of discussion. So within the workspace, like the budgeting, the reporting, it will include more advanced scenario planning and advanced forecasting for better visualization type reporting and more interaction. Teams will focus on the most complex business decisions as the data and the information will be available for those decisions just in time. So we're talking about moving into use of more real-time data. We'll see routine forecasts, handled by algorithms that are continually evaluated and monitored, more again, automation within those routine activities. In the workforce space, as we said, as I mentioned there, computers will handle routine requests from business leaders And what that's going to result in is a more proactive finance organization, because people will spend less time in that preparation of data and the hunting and gathering that's gone on, and they'll spend more time asking questions, broader questions about the business. Now that they have the information and the data available, they'll be able to learn more about what real decisions help impact sort of the business process, and less about the gathering of information. And so for the workplace, what that means is agility will become the quality that finance needs to develop. Because with all the information, with the evolving sort of technology, differentiated service levels will become part of our business. Different functions that we get involved in will have different needs, and we'll have to be flexible within our finance workspace in order to be able to provide that type of quality service that the functions and our stakeholders will expect. So we may see more things around co-location with finance within business teams. You know, it'll be a combination of people and technology that keep keep business functions and people together. So overall, we expect more and more of the data to be handled as cognitive and predictive tools, continue to advance. But again, talent becomes into play here, as the resource teams evaluating and monitoring won't be those traditional roles of finance, but more a combination of data scientists and storytellers and kind of the cognitive interpretation as we go through. So to talk about that in a little more on the O2C space, I'll let Phyllis flip to the next slide.
As with the rest of finance, order-to-cash departments are going to be changing and evolving. The accounts receivable or order-to-cash departments, like few other departments within the company, can provide some really tremendous insights into almost every aspect of the business. Yes. If you think about AR or order-to-cash, they're one of the few roles that straddle both internal as well as external customers. They have knowledge as to what processes are working well and which aren't, and work directly with customers on a regular basis. In this new world, knowledge is going to be shared, and it's going to be used to drive business strategy. Data that gets derived from things like accounts receivable agings, cash flow forecasts, and customer issues are going to be viewed and addressed in real time, and they're going to be shared across the entire company. People are going to be able to use all of this essential data to be able to make better decisions in the future, to, you'll hear me talk about it frequently, present that one single face to the customer, and really drive the change. As David mentioned, they're going to be data scientists, they're going to be storytellers. And what greater department in the company to be those storytellers than those that know what is wrong with your products, what is good with your products, which customers are happy, which customers are unhappy, which customers are paying on time, which ones are the high-value customers, who do you want to try and sell more to? All of that information makes the order-to-cash department an extremely valuable tool for sharing all of this information across the business.
Yeah, so taking a look now at finance cycles, so kind of what you had said around strategic stewardship, you had mentioned about, being able to add the value right into the business, knowing external and internal activities. That to me relates a lot to finance cycles. And what I mean by that is, like it says on the slide, finance is going real time, and this is getting, more true every day. The distinction between the operational and the analytical cycles, it's disappearing. Think about what you might be hearing around touchless close, seamless sort of integration. The fact is, leading organizations are operating really based on the new mantra that there is no closing time. So close, forecast, reforecasting in some scenarios, they aren't once a month or quarterly, they're happening in a real-time basis. And so the work is really the high impact area here. Stakeholder expectation for information and insight is just going to continue to increase at a dramatic pace. So the continuous monitoring of sales, cash flows, inventory, other key metrics, they're going to become the norm. It's going to be the table stakes. So as mentioned previously, the workforce will continually have a shift in talent. The mix of traditional process owners, the data scientists, ultimately augmented by artificial intelligence. It's all to provide better, deeper learning and pattern recognition that will allow for better insights and faster decision making. And in the workspace, we'll see flatter and more distributed finance organizations with agile teams that can take advantage of instant and easy access to data. That's all made possible by these touchless and seamless integrated platforms. The barriers that finance faces today, that are driven by technology and data processing limitations, those are slowly changing. We'll see this changes, information becomes more available instantly to those who need it. So this will free up people again to focus on delivering and discovering new insights and being able to act upon them based on data being available more on a real-time basis than in these cyclical cycles that we've typically operated in. So Phyllis, to look at the impact of order to cash.
So, as David mentioned, data is going to be available and shared real time. The whole close process is going to cease to exist and is going to go away. I can't tell you how many customers come and approach us because they don't have data in real time, that they can't run an aging in real time. They can't communicate with their customers in real time. It truly affects the relationship with the customer. And like I said, all of this really boils down to how we are doing business with our customers. Moving forward, customers shouldn't have to wait to be approved for things like new credit lines. Credit lines, onboarding a customer should take a matter of minutes, especially if it's a low-risk customer. You've gone through all your due diligence in an automated process. Everything should happen very quickly so that sales can get back to the business of selling more product and customers can get on board and start buying products more rapidly. Payments that come in from customers should be visible every day and posted to the general ledger. That way, when the order to cash team, when the collectors are talking to customers, they're not making phone calls for no reason. They're not trying to collect on money that was already paid. And then, as Akshay mentioned in my bio, I come from a functional background. I can't tell you how many times when I was working in various roles where I would have folks from FP&A on my doorstep on a daily basis looking for a new cash forecast. Cash flow that comes from your accounts receivable is paramount to the business. It's not just getting that money in and knowing, being able to use it. It's being able to identify when it's coming in so that, the AP knows when to pay the bills, so that the corporation knows when they can make purchases and things like that. It's being able to see cash and see it forecasted anytime you want, real time, 24/7 on a regular basis to know and modify and be able to adjust your business as it's coming in. Again, it all becomes a real-time cycle so that time is spent adding more value to the business.
Yeah, so you mentioned something I wrote down here to reiterate, is that the relationship with the customers is changing, and that's internal and external. And I think that's a great lead into what we're talking here about in terms of self-service. So as this slide states, self-service will become the norm. There are plenty of our business partners that don't need hand-holding anymore when it comes to basic finance. We can ask Siri, we can ask Alexa, questions that can get answered by digital voice on smartphones or through chatbots, auto-delivered, visualization reporting. Over time, we're going to see these smart agents learn the type of information and the business data that, individual people need, and then they'll deliver it proactively. So as this future unfolds, what we're going to see is data and spreadsheets being replaced by this, visually rich information that's intuitive, it's accessible, it's easy to use. So the accounting work in spreadsheets is going to be replaced by this technology. the higher value work, it will require cross-functional collaboration among the business, the technology, and the finance strategists. In the workforce, companies that want to excel in the new world, they're going to develop that skill set necessary for a self-service culture. So it's a little bit different than ways we may have or methods we may have in place today. So making sure you're accessing and developing people who understand customer experience will be critical in the future. And then in the workspace, like security is going to take on a new sense of urgency. Finance data will be exposed to a whole new set of business users and environments. And so in a self-service world, like data security will become more and more important. So getting self-service right will be paramount. The growing expectations for responsiveness and quality from finance, the last thing we all want is a frustrated or an unhappy customer or stakeholder. And so focusing on self-service will run hand in hand as automation increases, as chatbots, for example, scale across different business functions in order just to handle the demand. And so if we look at this, I'll turn it back to you, Phyllis, to look at this from an O2C space.
So, David, you mentioned Siri and Alexa. I would be remiss to not mention my best friend, Gia, who is our digital assistant here at 𝗕𝗲𝗄𝗏, who I happen to talk to probably on a regular basis and really enjoy talking to and getting information from. So speaking about self-service, coming from the AR and order-to-cash background, many of you have probably heard the order-to-cash or credit and collections department being called the sales prevention department. Customers go to great lengths often to avoid answering phones and responding to emails. So self-service becomes a really great method for interacting with customers. Besides offering them a faster, more immediate way of getting their answers to an issue and helping control unnecessary costs, self-service portals are also a great way to boost your relationship with your customers. I think they definitely help improve in terms of customer satisfaction. It gives you the appearance of being a 24/7 company. It gives them access to information. You then have the ability to access and extract information like invoices and statements. A good self-service portal will allow a customer the ability to make payments online. It's going to also help on the back end, help bring those payments in more quickly. Customers are now sending communications to their vendors through these self-service portals. They can let a vendor know very quickly if an invoice needs to be disputed. It can then be resolved in a more timely fashion. It makes you, all in all, an easier company to do business with. Self-service also takes many other forms. It's not just being available as a portal to your customers. It can also take the form of robotics that pull things like remittance advice, or can deploy a bot to secure data, or as a digital assistant like we talked about, Siri, Alexa, or Gia, that you can talk to that can provide immediate information about the business. Digital assistants are great for the analysts working with the accounts. So for example, our collectors use Gia to be able to review or re-review a credit application. They can ask Gia to send out the new credit application and recheck the credit. They can find out a balance, or if they're talking to a customer, they can ask Gia when the last payment came in. All of this sort of self-service information, really having it quickly at their fingertips, makes doing business easier. We also see executives using our digital assistant for things like sitting in an audit committee meeting. They might be sitting there and you might be discussing bad debt or balances, overdue balances in a certain region. You can simply ask your digital assistant, to provide that information. It's real time. It comes up in a graphical depiction or a verbal depiction, and it makes it very easy to have that information at their fingertips. All of this allows an executive who may need information in off hours or when no one else is there to provide it. It gives you access to all of that information.
Yeah, so if we think about all the elements that we've talked about already, they kind of all converge a little bit in and around operating model. And, you know, this is where in the primary work that I do, where I see a lot of the impacts happening. So we will see an emergence of a new service delivery model as robotics, algorithms begin to integrate with the workforce. Companies are given the opportunity to assess the benefits of automation against onshore and offshore operations. So, you know, digital provides a new lever for managing costs. It gives finance an opportunity to reevaluate how it's organized, where work gets done, what kind of processes require human intervention, what kind of processes may not. We're likely to see more of a finance as a service model gain some traction beyond mid-market, so into the bigger global organizations. You know, so in the workspace, you know, we really see the days of copying and pasting special values from contracts, you know, invoices and uploading into ERP systems. Like, that stuff's going to disappear. You know, leading finance organizations are going to design automation tools to do this kind of work. We're watching it happen right now. You know, where people will turn their attention to really is the exception-based activities and the more providing insights, you know, the investigative work, not the process-oriented tasks and activities. You know, the continued trend within the workspace is having a diverse talent model. You know, I guess I can't overestimate this enough, or, you know, emphasize this enough. You know, the workforce will move, you know, really, it kind of can be a project-to-project orientation, you know, embedding capabilities across the enterprise, you know, creating integration with business units, you know, eliminating kind of those finance silos that have to exist within business now. You know, the talent base needs to be open to learning, and that's where they'll see their opportunity for growth. You know, and in the finance workspace, will need to be enabled and facilitated, you know, through easy to use collaboration, you know, supportive tools, you know, across a broad range of teams. This will be a critical activity as, you know, as finance begins to expand, not only, you know, in and throughout the business, but also as the tools and the technology become available to all the different people, like we mentioned in self-service just a few minutes ago. So, you know, companies may see a significant disruption in and around offshoring and the outsourcing space. You know, some of you guys may be undergoing that or looking at that currently. You know, the suppliers and the capabilities, you know, in this, you know, lane are going to look very different than they do today. You know, building cross-functional dynamic teams, however, it's not easy. So being proactive and preparing for what's ahead and identifying particularly, you know, the people and the leaders that can help navigate that transition will be critical. So Phyllis, what are your thoughts on this one?
So, you know, as we see it, David, you know, tomorrow's operating model is going to be one that's really driven by advanced analytics and automation. And it's basically going to render the outsourcing environment obsolete. The manual, repetitive tasks that often send off, you know, that have often historically been sent offshore to minimize costs are now being automated. The thought-provocative and analytical parts of the work are going to be completed by a new and differently trained workforce. If you think about it, when you look at these offshore environments, they were all created, in many cases at least, to save money. Companies wanted to send the transactional work to a place where they could basically throw bodies at things. In an automated world, that's no longer necessary. So those tasks really can be brought back into the fold, brought back onshore. The tools themselves, the software tools, will handle all those automated functions like mailing invoices, like mailing billing statements, applying cash. And then this new and differently trained workforce, those of the data scientists, the analysts, are going to be working onshore to really provide insights into the business. All of this is what it's going to do is it's going to help greatly reduce costs. And then the organizations now they're going to be more agile. They're going to be lighter organizations that can really change, scale, and grow as the business, as the business changes and as the business grows, bringing on new acquisitions, growing organically. All of that can very easily be done and brought into the fold without really adding a whole lot of workforce. Outcome-based performance is going to become the norm, and really outcome-based costs are also going to become the norm. A lot of the vendors will start charging based on outcomes they can provide. How much DSO can you reduce by? How much cash flow can you improve? Not strictly, it's no longer going to be rears in the seat, right? License-based charges are going to start going away. It's a new and different operating model, and it's really a new and different way of thinking. And it really, shared service centers are going to become data analysis hubs. They're not going to be those centralized transactional environments that they once were. And ultimately, I think we're going to start to see them, the offshoring and the business process outsourcing organizations really going away.
Yeah, that's a good lead in here too to the enterprise resource planning, like this prediction here. And I know we spoke about this as we prepared for the call here, and really traditional ERP systems, they're going to be challenged by microservices that are available in finance applications. Kind of to your point on what you just made around outcome results. There'll be a shift in the landscape around players within the ERP space, specialized applications and services that can sit on top of those, and most importantly, they all integrate with the big ERP platforms. So to enable work, as companies move out towards the cloud, they're inherently choosing to become more standardized. And so instead of building customized systems, companies will want to buy what they need from a growing marketplace with apps and services, just like we use the App Store on our iPhones. Technology, it's getting smarter, and so it's integrating itself with ERP platforms and, not really needing people to intervene there. So instead of being an app like we perhaps are in our current space, the workforce is going to need to focus on using the app. So to give business leaders that information that they need to make smarter decisions and faster. Things are going to be available. We've talked a lot about it real time. So how do we use that information and what you mentioned in about service centers being, analytics centers and data analysis? Like we're going to need to know how to interpret that information. And so in the workplace, cloud-based apps, they'll ensure you're constantly updated with the latest releases, so there won't be big efforts in and around those. So the days of investing heavily in customized applications, they're going to fade. The cost is just too high, comparably to maintain. And so the bottom line, we like to say finance is entering a golden age of technology. As cloud becomes the norm, finance apps and the microservices associated, they're going to thrive. So finance will benefit in a way based on reducing the complexity and the cost associated with that technology and not sacrificing functionality. In fact, probably getting a little bit more bang for their buck. So Phyllis?
So admittedly, this sixth prediction that David mentioned about ERP planning is very favorable to vendors like us. So I say that with all candor. The large ERPs are likely going to become unable to meet the demands of the changing finance requirements that David and I have been speaking about throughout this webinar. In order to provide a holistic approach to customers, they're going to need to open up APIs. They're going to need to give people access to their tools and to their systems. The entire supply chain, people such as third-party credit bureaus, the ERPs that we've mentioned, banks, self-service portals, vendor portals, those kind of things are going to all become integrated, and they're all going to be able to need to be linked via API. All of this so that the customer, again, keep in mind that people need to be able to look at their customer. They need to be able to react and respond to their customer in a holistic approach, this single view to a customer from a company so that you can provide them with all of the services necessary. And many of these things which you can't find or can't easily secure that data from an ERP. The use as well of blockchain in order to cash is going to really aid in exchanging of this O2C data. Transactions are going to be validated and secured across the supply chain and performed in real time. You know, a common example of blockchain in AR is the e-invoicing process. So we're really going to see a change out there. I don't think that the ERPs are going to go away, but I think they're going to become more involved and more open to working with the other software vendors and third-party vendors that are out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, so, you know, integration, APIs, real-time info, you know, reactions, responding, all the things we've talked about, you know, all center in and around data here. And this was another topic that, you know, as Phyllis and I prepared here, you know, discussed a little further at length. You know, data, it's a blessing and a curse in this environment. You know, with the advancements in API, you know, it's driving data standardization, but it's not a silver bullet. You know, for as much as, you know, digital transformations can offer, the end value and the biggest value is only as good as the data that's being utilized. And so, you know, looking for silver bullets or to solve data problems, you know, via digital, you know, don't get disappointed. Like, this is hard work. You know, automation makes the work easier to get done, but it doesn't solve 100% for the data issues. So again, kind of no illusions. You know, this is the hardest part to do, but it's very, very important. So the work itself around the data component is really getting into the weeds and establishing, and probably more importantly, enforcing, you know, data governance. A lot of clients that where I've been historically have had, you know, some master data management, but enforcing that governance, enforcing those rules and having that governance has been something that's been amiss. And so within the workforce space, you know, really what we're seeing is that organizations need to identify that data evangelist, that chief data officer that, you know, not only has the authority to enforce, you know, the governance rules, but also the ability to drive continuous data improvement. You know, this bleeds over into the workspace because it's also a change of culture, and you need to be able to stay the course and think incrementally when it comes to the data challenges so that people can continue to do their best work with the information that is at hand. You know, so data issues, they hide beneath the surface, you know, partly because of technology, you know, partly because there's no path to elevate. But as mentioned, you know, kind of where we see the change evolving here and who's getting some authority now is that champion, is that chief data officer, and having a strong governance model associated with it will be critical as more and more applications need more and more information across the board.
So going forward, I think big data is going to be the key analytical tool supporting the decision-making across the organization. Finance, and very specifically the order-to-cash department, is going to be the central repository to house and share this data. Best-in-class organizations are going to need to be committed to sharing this data as well. Just bringing the data in, getting it, but it also needs to be shared across the environment. It needs to be used, and used in such a way that we can get actionable insights from this information. Using analytics insights gained from both structured data, and structured data is things like spreadsheets or machine-generated data, as well as the unstructured data, things like emails and files, are going to allow us to make better business decisions in the future. So using the information that, you know, about how we've historically performed to help us drive, you know, continue to do the things that we've done well as a business, make changes, make rapid changes on the things that we have not done so well, and really to learn and gain insights from all this information. We're going to be able to manage order to cash as well as the corporate-wide behaviors by deploying, really three different types of analytics. The descriptive analytics, those that really talk about what has historically happened in the business. So applying, our analytics on top of all of this big data. Predictive analytics, really helping us to predict outcomes. In the world of order to cash, we use predictive analytics for things like to predict cash flow, to predict DSO, to predict customer payment behavior, to predict risk performance and things like that. And ultimately, we're getting to a world of prescriptive analytics. Prescriptive analytics, will tell you, really prescribe, as it were, how to change your business, how to operate your business to gain a desired outcome. Additional insights can also be gained into things like customer payment behavior, DSO, and things like to help you manage traditional KPIs and metrics. Finance is a very heavily metric-driven department. Using all of this information, all of these order-to-cash data that has been provided in these central data lakes, really will help us to help drive current performance, help make modifications for future performance, as well as analyze all the things that we've done historically.
Yeah, so putting kind of a wrapper on this, the last one here is around workforce and workplace. As it says here on the slide, employees will be doing new things in new ways, some of which will make CFOs uncomfortable, change. I guess the overall kind of comment there is like change is hard. We state here that employees will be doing things new ways, and that can't be, again, I can't emphasize that enough. Finance talent is evolving, and it's evolving quickly. We mentioned data scientists, storytellers, advanced analytics, which is a shift for many, many finance organizations. The path forward, though, here is to make sure as you look at your talent, as you look at your people, as you look at new hires, you fit them for the future you're trying to create. So across these three spectrums, we've talked about the qualities that may rise to the top, including strong customer service, flexibility, collaboration skills. You need to add to that the technical capabilities needed for certain roles to use the tools that support those activities. The analytics components, the natural language pieces. There's more and more evolution of the tools that will continue to more and more evolve the capabilities as finance practitioners that we'll need to have. So make sure that your people can elevate the value of finance along the way as well. Strong communicators, deep understandings of the business. We talked about knowledge sharing and cross-functional teams and collaboration, throughout our time, here today. Having that ability to influence across function will continue to keep finance in the centerpiece of a lot of these business decisions. The information is going to be here, so you might as well enable your people to use it in the best way that they can. So Phyllis, any final comments from you?
Well, David, the way I see it very similar to the way you see it. It kind of all boils down to a changing environment and the willingness to change. In the future, we're going to see more of these hybrid roles, right? We're going to see roles where humans are performing those high-touch, high-visibility tasks, all that thought-provocative work. It's going to, that is always and probably will continue to be performed by humans. Bots, however, are going to be doing all of this manual and repetitive work that's out there. It brings me back, and I regularly come back to this, 80-20 rule of engagement in the new world, where 80% is going to be done in an automated fashion, and 20% will continue to be done by, human intervention. So with that, leaders need to be prepared for these new roles, as you mentioned. They're new roles of data scientists and analysts who understand both the business of order to cash as well as technology. They need to think about retraining the existing workforce and hiring the right skill sets for tomorrow. You know, we often think about, you know, the old school role of a credit manager or a director of credit or a director of order to cash, you know, sort of as this, you know, person who sits there and they make phone calls on past due invoices and they kind of rubber stamp credit applications coming in. We need to think about the kind of people we're going to be hiring for the next generation. Mm-hmm. We need people that can analyze the data, people that can provide insights, that can share the information, that are really these sort of global process owners that can own not just the order to cash, but own the customer across the organization so that we can optimize all the processes and that we can provide better customer service and better customer satisfaction to our customers. We can improve working capital metrics, we can improve cash flow metrics, all of these things, and all of these things are going to come with this new and improved, you know, workforce that we should be changing to. You know, yep. Organizations as well are going to become a little bit flatter. They're going to be, you know, with a single global process owner, they're going to be able to spread themselves, you know, a little more widely across the organization and sort of jump over those barriers and those silos that have historically been a part of the finance organizations that work with the customer. So in ending, you know, I want to quote the Finance 2025 study itself. All of your people should be able to contribute to elevating the value of finance in terms of communication, impact, and influence. Make every new hire count.
Yep.
And with that, we want to open up the floor and see if there are any questions.
Right, Phyllis. I would like to request all the participants to key in the question in the chat box. Phyllis, I would like to first quote the question that we have readily available, which is from one of the participants. Robotics to grab remittance information from third-party customer portal sites. Can you explain how this would be handled? And the statement is, I believe this would be HSEC issue and GDPR for any customer to allow connecting to third-party portal.
So I will preface my response by saying I am not a technologist, so if they're looking for a technological response, I can't provide that. I am a self-proclaimed functional expert, but what we typically do is, it's not really third-party customer portals. We typically can pull remittance information from third-party vendor portals, things, you know, common examples of that in the marketplace today would be somebody like an 𝗢𝗲𝗄 or a Tungsten or something like that, where payment information and invoice information can be secured. We typically don't go directly into the sites. We use APIs to connect, and we pull that information in and utilize that in the system. So far to date, we have not had any issues with GDPR. If I haven't answered the question or you want more information, please certainly feel free to contact me, and I'll get you the right answer if I've misunderstood it.
Thank you, Phyllis. Let me come over to the next question. Explain how digital assistants can be used in finance.
So, you know, today digital assistants can be used in a whole variety of ways. Digital assistants can be used to send information out to a customer via an email. They can interact and talk with a digital assistant. For example, we utilize our digital assistant to send out past due letters to customers, and so they can interact with 𝗔𝗂𝘀𝗁 and make payments or dispute invoices, things like that. Our digital assistant resides as well on all the operational desktops in our software environment. So if you are a collector, for example, a collector of money, you can utilize our digital assistant if you want. You can ask Gia a question. Hey, what was XYZ company's last payment date? You can use that when you're talking to, the customer or emailing with the customer to provide insights. I think I also mentioned, executives frequently using Gia, in things like audit committee meetings, board meetings, executive staff meetings, C-suite level meetings, where they might need some information and they are not, they're probably not as knowledgeable about the day-to-day account activities, but they can ask Gia for information. There's a whole bunch of different, if you think about it, it's a machine learning voice-assisted tool. So we have taught, at least in our environment, we've taught Gia all these different skill sets so that she can respond to anything from credit to collections to cash application, those types of activities. They're very specific. I think she'll also tell you the weather and the news in your location as well, if you'd like that.
Yeah, I'd also add in that, the digital assistants are used, within the business partnering space, in commercial, like the market type operation finance, to connect actuals to forecast data. Also in a way to, allow folks to be able to say, hey Alexa, what were sales last quarter versus what's planned for this product line in the coming quarter. There's many different ways that we've seen the digital assistants apply in that business partnering space around planning, forecasting, the variance analysis pieces, even within kind of the close and report cycle, for reporting. The neat thing about the digital assistant piece is it can integrate well with robotics. So where you've automated, processes, say around close, you can have your digital assistants being able to provide, updates on the ask in a way. So, there are a lot of broad applications to it. I think, for everybody who's maybe a Bank of America customer, you log on there and you've got Erica asking if she can help. I think we're going to see, we're not just gonna, but we are seeing more of that type of application within the finance space when it comes to doing kind of the analytics and the comparative, questions that we all, have to ask that are sort of the surface level right now, and then ultimately we'll drill down.
Thanks, Felix. Thanks, David. The next question is, I think this is more specific to 𝗙𝗏𝗄, so probably Felix, you can take it. What ERP systems is 𝗙𝗏𝗄 already integrated with?
So 𝗙𝗏𝗄 is, we'll call it ERP agnostic. We integrate with all of the major ERPs as well as legacy systems. We pull in information into a central data hub that integrates with one or many ERPs or legacies. For example, we're doing one implementation now that company has one version of Oracle R12. We're doing another implementation where it's a very large water company that has, I believe, 112 different ERPs and legacy system environments that we pull in information from.
Thank you, Phyllis. The next question, this is a very interesting question. Question is, much of the presentation was delivered in the future tense, it will versus it is. How much of this is really happening versus a desired future state? Can you speak to customers who are using this today?
Yeah, so I'll start here if that's okay, Phyllis. I think that's a great question, because the here and now solutions, I guess to directly answer your questions, can you speak to, customers who are using this today? I would say 100% of the clients that I serve within the life science, consumer and retail space are involved in some sort of digital deployment, whether it's starting their robotics journey or further down the lane and already using automations throughout their organization and looking to expand into more of the analytical and predictive type tool set. So I'll pivot a little bit and say, the it is part, the here and now pieces are really around the automation tools and the natural language processing and generation type tools. So getting, a data set that's converted into a report with key metrics, automating that process and having that produced is like tangible here and now in our space. What we see coming that's more emerging still is in and around the analytics and the predictive, and that's really a result of the advancements that's really going on in cognitive and the artificial intelligence space. So those tools are evolving just as fast as we're trying to learn how to use them. So that's still in a kind of pilot emerging space. And then the furthest sort of out on the curve as to what's coming, and Phyllis mentioned this a little bit in the 𝗤𝗂𝘂𝗧𝗖 in one of her 𝗤𝗂𝘂𝗧 spaces, is around blockchain. Blockchain is still probably a ways out from being broadly adopted, but people need to learn how to do and utilize that technology and the power of that tool now, so that when it does come about, they're prepared. So I think it's a spectrum across what's being used really today and what's desired future state, primarily because the digital continues to evolve as we're starting to utilize it. But I would say if you haven't started a digital journey, you might be a little bit behind now, because things around automation and some of those initial like technical back office, accounting type applications, those are rapidly becoming table stakes.
Thank you, David. I noticed that we are already a couple of minutes beyond our schedule. I'm not sure if you want to take another question or so, but just roll it out over here. Here's one other question that we have, maybe if the participants are still patient with us. The question is, I noticed there were not any knowledge check questions during the presentation. Is the CPE eligible?
So right now, we are not providing a CPE eligible webinar. We are working on doing that, however, for the next ones.
Thank you, Phyllis. I think we are good on the questions. Anything else you want to add, David, Phyllis, before we wrap up the session?
No, I'd just like to say thanks for everybody for joining in. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys today, and thanks, Phyllis, for everything, collaborating on this. It was a great session.
Yes, and thank you, David, very much. Thank you, David, and thank you, Deloitte, for everyone joining us today. For any more information and to take our digital score assessment, feel free to go to 𝗕𝗲𝗄𝗏 and you should be able to get more information. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.